Hello, Garland Nixon here with my friend and fellow YouTuber, Dmitri Zolotarev. We got plenty to talk about. Let's talk.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, Garland here. I got a great guest, Dmitri Zolotarev. Dmitri is a fellow YouTuber. He is a man of science, and he's way out there in Siberia. Interesting place where everything is cold. Dmitri, oh, I almost forgot. He's got his YouTube show, his YouTube channel called The Daily Planet. Well, that was Superman's. That was Superman's newspaper, The Daily Planet. Dmitri, welcome to my humble show.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you, Garland.
Wonderful. So let's start off with this. You are in Siberia. What area is that? Where are you? And like distance from what something we would know, like Moscow. Where
Now,
where?
distance from Moscow is approximately 5,000 kilometers, and which makes it 3,500 miles approximately. And my city is located, approximately 60 miles away from, well-known Lake Baikal, if it rings any bells, the biggest sweetwater lake in the world. Well, sometimes we call it a sea because it's really huge thing. It's a sea. It's a very dangerous sea to navigate, by the way. So a lot of wonderful things about speaking about the nature around us. So, and not everything cold is here.
Yeah, yeah,
In
yeah.
summer, it's almost as hot as in Dallas.
Wow, interesting. Just goes to
Absolutely.
show, I how little I know about Russia. You guys got cold, hot, and everything. Okay, so let's talk about the special military operation. Get your
Okay.
thoughts on it. The first thing was, and you notice I named the show the special military, economic, and diplomatic operation.
Absolutely.
When so I'm not going to, as they say in court, I'm not going to ask any leading questions to the witness. When you see that name, special military, economic, and diplomatic operation, knowing how I see the world, having watched some of my YouTube shows, what was your first thoughts about that?
Well, first of all, I felt gratitude because not many Americans see it the way you see it, and even less can be bold enough to do things like you do. This is what comes first to my mind, and then I'd be hit with a depth of the way you see it because it's exactly what it is: special military, economic, and diplomatic operation. By all means.
Yeah, one of the things I think is that's important is when I look now at the issue of diplomacy. You look at the Blinken people; they're just warmongers. There's no diplomacy there. But when I look at Sergei Lavrov, when I look at Wang Yi, when I look at the Chinese, I see people who have spent years learning the craft, learning diplomacy, understanding diplomacy, meaning you have to have some respect, even for your adversaries, in order to talk with them. What are your thoughts on diplomacy when you look at the Russians, when you look at the Chinese diplomats, and when you look at Tony Blinken and his ilk?
You know, well, I do respect the diplomats as people of a huge thing which they are supposed to do. But for the last, let's say 8, maybe 10 years, I'm looking at the diplomacy in the world since I've been well, since four approximately, I was into international affairs. My
Mhm.
most famous shows in the Soviet Union have been the international affairs shows. We did have two: Today in the World, or The World Today, and International Panorama. which were hosted by the professional diplomats. People who have spent years, like you said, learning the craft, history, international history, history of the world. And that's how I saw it every time. The people of highest grade, way bigger than, well, average politician to me, because diplomat is something bigger. So anybody can be a politician, narrow-minded, you know, but the diplomat is bigger. So, and when the whole thing in Georgia in 2008 erupted and on, I was shocked. Well, for the first time, I figured maybe Biff Tannen did in fact stole, did manage to steal a real time machine, went back and changed something. Because what was happening in the world was the insanity of Back to the Future Part 2. That's what I've been seeing, and that's what I'm observing for all these years. Let's put it this way. So, and I was shocked by unprofessionality of the Western diplomats, or should I say, the people who are, well, presented as diplomats, because I think there are Western diplomats, professional people, but they are not on the scene. Well, Sergei Lavrov is a man whom I'm proud of, because he makes everybody proud of being citizens of this country. As he does his job, he represents Russia. It's something what makes me proud. When I see Chinese diplomats, I always I see how huge history and culture of this country is, because only the country of big culture and the country of self-respect, government of self-respect, with self-respect. I'm sorry, I'm Russian. I do make terrible and stupid mistakes. So, well, the government which cares about its, face and puts up the best and only the professional, the of a top rank may do good for your country. So the people who care about the country in the first place put up the diplomats like China, like Russia. And it looks like Western governments don't care about their countries like at all, because people who they up as diplomats, I'm sorry, they make me embarrassed for them, because America is a great country. Yes, some Russians may throw rotten apples at me right now, because there are a lot of people in Russia who respect America, who understand everything, what the whole thing is. But there are some Russians who are so-called, no, America is bad and everything about America is bad. No, that's not how I see it. But America is a great country. America is a country of history, despite its relatively young country, the United States. And all the American countries are relatively young. But the history about them is huge and interesting. And America deserves way better. Europe deserves way better. Europe deserves like Valery Giscard d'Estaing, like people like General de Gaulle, Charles de Gaulle. So,
Well, one of the things, Dmitry, I think is important, and that is to be able to understand the difference between the ruling elite and the working class everyday person who, I say, for instance, I grew up, my father was what we call a longshoreman. He worked on the docks unloading ships. He wore a hard hat, and, it was cold, it was hot. He went out there and he was just a hardworking person who earned a living to feed his family, which is what most people in this world are trying to do, But
absolutely.
let me ask you this. You know what I think of them, but your thoughts when you look at the ruling elite of Europe, the Baerbachs, the Macrons, the Sunaks, and then you look at the ruling elite, it's absurd, it's farcical. But your thought when you look at the ruling elite class of the West now, and as you said, it's important for a diplomat to be concerned and to love their country and love their citizens. The way you see the ruling elite in the West now, and the their attitudes, I'm not going to lead you, their attitudes towards the people of their own country?
Well, it looks like it's a tragedy, actually. It's a tragedy what we see. Yes, I was born in the Soviet Union, the country which was opposed by almost everybody, but there was a respect. And there was a time when there was a sane, let's say that, ruling elite in Europe. And there was, we were taught that there are a lot of troubles, problems in capitalist world. And that was true. But for time being, 4 decades ago, yeah, it looked like people of working class sometimes their voice have been listened by ruling elites, and some countries, as I see it, were more or less for or into socialism, or some elements of socialism, elements of support this working class understanding, because these are the people who feed the ruling class. What is the ruling class without working class? They are nobody. They're nobody. They are, no more like prehistoric people with, sticks and spears hunting mammoth. And, that's it. If we don't have working class, so we just cease to exist. And that's why, by the way, in the first place, the Soviet Union was the Soviet Union. There were no classes. Everybody was in equal rights. Yeah, some people did have their privileges. There's a huge topic, and we can talk about it for endlessly. Well, maybe sometime we'll do something about that. There are a lot of interesting things, but I remember, by the way, I remember we in Soviet Union we used to watch American movies. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
not many of them, but some of them very good movies, and European movies. And you see, I remember good French comedies with Pierre Richard. Do you remember the guy?
No, no.
No, this blonde, funny man, Pierre Richard. He was the star of French comedy movies in 70s, in 80s. Pierre Richard. And Soviet Union was kind of friendly with France, and we did have a lot about France. French movie festivals, French cosmetics sometimes, and I remember one of the movies, the movie, well, it doesn't matter what it was about, but there was an episode in the movie about how they arrested de Gaulle, Charles de Gaulle. And the father of the leading man, of the main character of the movie, was a working class man. And there was line in the movie. Well, we are the people, we are the working class, we are the real citizens of the country. So you see, since France used to make movies like that, it means that movie makers, people, well, sort of far from being a working class people, well, they understood the thing. They understood the processes in the society, and they understood how valuable people are, no matter who you are. Well, the judge, the businessman, General de Gaulle, or just a working class man, a lecturer, Sherman, and or a miner, or just a zipper man.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yes. And now, what I see, it looks like ruling elites in Europe are crushing their countries with a wrecking ball. That's exactly what is going on. This is the tragedy. It doesn't matter what ideology we used to have in the Soviet Union. We did respect. We used to exchange letters with people in Europe, with with people and children in Europe, of so-called communist part of Europe, you see,
Hmm.
so socialist Europe, let's say that, and we build relations, and now I see that nothing has changed. But the people in Europe, people in the West, they just sort of lost their hope. They got terrified. They didn't used to be that way. The people of Europe, I remember when I was a child, when I was a teenager. So now it's just oil and water, which don't mix. You can shade them, all right, yes. So the molecules of water and oil just make some blurred mass. And that's what Europe is. And it looks like there is a huge vacuum between political elite in Europe, or should I say, in the West, not only in Europe, and the people. And it looks like it reminds me of a bomb containing of two different substances, and then when they contact, it explodes. And now we do really have an explosive situation because it cannot be that way any longer, I think. Well, because it shouldn't be this way. It's unnatural what's going on now. It's a really back to the future part two situation in the world.
Let me ask you this. I'm sure you saw what happened in the Canadian Parliament with the celebration of this Waffen SS Nazi, right? Let me show people. I sent it to you. I don't know if you had a chance to see it today. There's an article. I'm going to eventually do something on it. Let me show you this article in Politico today. A guy from the Chatham House in England, and it is one of the worst pieces of, I don't know what to call it. I'm not going to call it journalism, but it's one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. So it's in Politico, might I add, owned by a German guy, Politico, Axel Springer. But let's look at this. Fighting against the USSR didn't necessarily make you a Nazi. When you look at this article, I mean, he's going on. Now, his recent book, Russia's War on Everybody. So this is the kind of people that we have here, right? And he's going on talking about basically making excuses for this guy and talking about the problem is not that this guy was a Nazi, not that they celebrated him, but that it's being used for propaganda purposes, as if we're just supposed to ignore the fact that a man's marching around who is a Nazi, and not just that he is a Nazi and he's walking around. That is what it is. There's going to be people who are people who like these extreme ideologies. That's a reality. But that a Western government brought them in. Now, I have a friend who has testified before the Canadian Parliament before, and he said he was fully vetted. They checked everything. Of course, if you're going to talk before the prime minister or whatever, whether Russia in any country, they're going to look in your background to make sure you don't have a history of maybe mental issue, violence. Have you been arrested? What's your background? Where did you work? They're going to, before you that, they're going to do a full intelligence. Intelligence organizations are going to look into your background. Do you own a gun? Do you have any guns? Do you have any weapons? All of those things. So it's clear that they knew who this guy was. They bring him in. They celebrate him. Yay, he's fighting Russians again. You look at that, and let me tell you, there are a lot of people here who are looking at this with just absolute horror. Your thoughts when you see, again, I look at that and I say, this is not the average person on the street. The average person on the street would be like, oh my God, that guy was a Nazi. This is the ruling elite class that we have. Your thoughts when you A, see what's happening in Canada, and B, see these articles coming out, making excuses for this, justifying this, actually going after people who are opposing this. Your thoughts?
Well, I don't know. Should I call should I call it telling my thoughts, or I should rather say I should tell my feelings? Because when I saw this whole parliament thing, I felt I felt not just I'm Russian. Sometimes words slip my mind. Not offended, a way, or something way deeper. I felt disgusted, and
Hmm.
I felt like someone is dancing on the mass grave on of Holocaust victims. I had an image like someone has a party uh, in Treblinka or any other concentration camp, or just, you see, someone twisted minded decided to have a party on the territory of former concentration camp where hundreds of thousands of Jews lost their life in a terrible way. A party with catering, with restaurant, you see, or maybe sometimes with something way worse, sodomic or something else. That's what it is. That's how I see it. This is this is something, well, this is something way more insane than an example I just presented you before. Even Biff Tannen did have some
Hmm.
human inside of him. This is something worse, and this is not something beastly, because the beasts, they are not like that. And when I saw this article, I saw an example of cannibalism. It's like I went into the restaurant of cannibals, where the food made of, of human flesh is being served, and they just approach me and say, "What do you want, sir? Do you have a reservation?" "Oh, no, 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 no! Don't bother. We have some places here. You're welcome." And this is even worse, because they feed with it people, the unsuspecting public. You see, the people who read this, they maybe they trust the media. Not everybody is prepared to, analyze what is good, what is bad, what is the source behind it, what is the story behind the story. You see, and sometimes people just read it. The people who are uh, striving to survive. People who are striving to survive. I'm not talking about people who live on the streets. They just care to stay alive till tomorrow. And I mean the people who work hard, who are being afraid of being robbed because they just live in the neighborhood, which is hell of a neighborhoods, and they see it, they read it, and they have their mind shaped. And sometimes, if yes, homeless person is being offered some food, does this person know what this food is? What this sausage is made of? And this is exactly what it is. This is the sausage made of us, of you, me, of those who died in concentration camps, so on and so forth. You get the idea. That's what
Yes.
it is. This is the most, one of the most, I don't know, maybe they are capable of something even worse than that. But this is cannibalism at its worst. Well, I don't know how worst it is. Maybe it may go even
Well, let
further
me
down.
take another direction.
Yeah.
That was my first impression. My second impression was, I'm glad to see it happen. My father used to have a saying: if there is a snake there, in the United States, in this state particularly, from the mountains, there's two particular snakes. One's a rattlesnake, one is a copperhead. He said, I prefer a rattlesnake because a copperhead is silent. You walk a while by, you step on it, it's going to bite you. When you come upon a rattlesnake, it makes noise, it rattles, it warns you.
Yeah.
Right. And my dad was like, I'd rather have a warning. If somebody's going to present a danger to me, I would rather know. I looked at it and I said, this is a good thing. because we need to know who these people are. We don't need to look at them and think that they're corrigible, that they're somehow salvageable, that maybe some way you can work a deal with them. Maybe, no, you can't work a deal with people like this. You can't make a deal with people like that. And when I looked at that, I thought the other thing that has happened here, online, I'm sure you've seen it. On radio, I've been working, I do radio, etc. The discussion now is out about the history after World War II, where the West brought Nazis over, where they came to Ukraine, where they were inculcated, they were made part of the society, and how some of them rose to power, and etc. So while it is very offensive and painful to see this, it is very enlightening because it opened a conversation that had been hidden. They did these things. They brought these Nazis over. They hid them. They did all these terrible things. And average people just didn't know that it happened. They didn't know that these people were walking amongst us. What do you think about my feelings that we should celebrate this? Because now that they're out, we can expose them and we can know who these people are.
This is what I would call this approach. What I would say about that, in the when reconnaissance, Soviet reconnaissance was searching for Nazis in Russia, behind the front lines, on the Russian sides. Nazis were just disguised as regular Soviet soldiers, officers, and so on and so forth. And that's what is called the moment of truth. The enemy has shown himself. So you see how to define him. And they learned the ways how to define the enemy. Well, maybe they wear the same shoes, the same boots, the same things, but do they have buttons or stripes on their underwear? This is what is defining. Well, or maybe this was taken from German soldiers, underwear, who knows? But the moment of truth is something which defines exactly who you see in front of you. And this is the moment of truth. We in Russia say, so you are warned, since you are warned, you are armed. So now we may consider ourselves armed. We know exactly who you are, guys. Well, since you, me, we might have known way before that who they are. But now we can talk a way more wider audience, which we see, oh my God, whom we are dealing with here. So maybe Russia is not that bad. Maybe United States and Europe, maybe they're not that right. And maybe we shouldn't listen to this media. Maybe we should go to alternative sources, the voices of minority. And you know what, guys? The voice of minority is way more oftentimes right and likely telling the truth to you. Keep it in your minds. The voice of minority is more often an honest voice. So,
Yes.
Roland, you're absolutely right.
Yes, I'm glad. I'd rather see the threat. I'd rather see the threat right in front of me. Once I know the threat is there, I can deal with the threat. I also think this, and I've said for a while, this discussion about some kind of a negotiated settlement to Ukraine. There was a man, Stokely Carmichael, eventually changed his name to Kwame Ture. He was a member of the Black Panther, Marxist, and he said when people talked about what was it, the term? At the time, they were talking about nonviolence, dealing with your adversary using nonviolence. And he said, nonviolence only works if your adversary has a conscience, right? And when you think about this discussion of some kind of a negotiated settlement with a special military operation, I've been saying for a long time, Tony Blinken, Victoria Nuland, no, you cannot have a negotiated settlement with these people. They have no conscience. They have no empathy. They cannot be trusted. They will say anything. They don't care if it's true or false, if it accomplishes their means. We've seen what they do. Your thoughts on the concept of a negotiated settlement? How does and I'm going to use the word end. I'm not saying end, it's over, things are never over. But how does, if we use the word loosely, end or some kind of conclusion or whatever? I've said the special military operation ends with the collapse of the Ukrainian military and the Ukrainian government. Your thoughts on people who talk about, well, the Russian leadership should have tried to negotiate. They should have tried a different way. They shouldn't have went to. They shouldn't have resorted to military a military invasion. Your thoughts on that discussion, Dmitry?
Well, in fact, like you know, like our mutual friend Scott Ritter have told us and the audience a lot of times, Russia did try a number of times, and still Lavrov says we are open to any negotiations. But since but they say, well, since the beginning of SMO, or someone would prefer to say the war, the terms, conditions of those negotiations have been changed. Well, but still we are open to negotiations, and the more time you take to, well, to fight, the closer the conditions come to a negotiable surrender. Well, so we are looking at the arrow of the, indicator. Oh, and now indicator is, well, let's say a bit more closer to the red part of this. Because, well, the point of no return have been crossed way before. Well, they have well, Russia, a few times, Russia was ready to discuss the end of this conflict on stern terms, based on respect of those, of the treaty which would have been signed. But now, many people don't believe in negotiations. Well, but still it's possible. Well, yes, the conditions will be very different, way different, since, well, they announced the conditions in February 2024, and later that year, and on, you see. But, well, to negotiate, Ukraine, I don't know, I can't imagine whom they can present now as a negotiator. So to discuss this, yes, unnegotiable surrender may be signed with anybody, like we used to see an example of Japan or an example of Nazi Germany in 1945. Well, the Russian generals didn't care who they talk about, Nazi, non-Nazi people or something. They just wanted the authority delegated with power to sign something. So that's it, just judicial power. You represent Nazi government, sign it. Okay, and we don't care who you are, we'll deal with you later. Now, well, I frankly, I don't believe in negotiations now. Now it went too far, way too far. And I don't see any sign in Ukraine of willing to negotiate. They still peddling this stupid thing that Ukraine will win, will fight back our territories, so on and so forth. Well, guys, what's the weather like on your planet? God damn it. Tell me, please. Oh, are you separated from reality, or you still think you're playing toy soldiers? The people are dying here. You know that? And that's why it's very hard to me to imagine something else but unnegotiable surrender of Ukraine, because they don't have resources to fight.
Right.
They are losing it. So the arrow goes into a red part of the indicator, and at some point of time, maybe it doesn't have any way to go further, which doesn't mean the things don't go further. You see what I mean?
Yes.
It's a convoluted comparison to a technical thing. Since you are having, vinyl discs player, you have those indicators all the time. So, well, if we imagine a negotiations between Russia and Ukraine, I feel more likely that someone represents Ukraine now. Well, from the West, since it's the war of the West with Russia. It's
That's
not the war
important.
of Ukraine and Russia. No.
There is,
Russia didn't invade Ukraine. By the way, it didn't invade Ukraine. Yes, Russia crossed into Ukrainian territory, right? But the fight isn't between Ukraine and Russia. It's the fight of the collective West against Russia by the hands and blood of Ukrainian people. My father used to live in Ukraine for almost 4 decades. And my father lived through the whole siege of Mariupol, by the way. Not only my father, my aunt, my cousin also. All of them survived. I'm one of the most lucky guys in this world. My family did survive the Battle of Mariupol. And my father, who was 78 years old, saved some people from his block of the building. He almost died a few times. 4 times a day he went up on ninth floor and back to check if there's something, someone is hiding there or not, if everything is okay, if the people in the basement are okay. So it was a terrible time for me, for my brothers, to wait for a month and a half. We didn't know. We didn't have any idea whether they dead, alive, how they died, if they're dead or not, something. And you see, to me now, when it went so far, it's very hard to imagine something. I'm sorry, I went a bit emotional, and maybe what I'm saying is a little bit,
no, I
not
understand.
what you expected, but well, and also, yes, and also, uh, the West does talk about negotiations, but they do everything they can to prevent it
Yes,
from
yes.
happening.
Let
So
me,
they do a hell of a job to prevent any negotiations.
yes, it's
So
obvious.
this is a theater of absurd. And I'm sorry, Galen, maybe it's not what you expected to hear, but that's
No,
how I see
I agree with you. Let me ask you this: your thoughts on Poland? Very interesting dynamic, because in the beginning, I'm a big believer in the context of history. That history, you can't cheat history. So the Poles initially were, they're the biggest supporters of the Nazi regime in Ukraine. And I think a big part of that was Poland wanted the approval of their masters in Washington, D.C. Poland looked at the Germany, they looked at the UK, and they saw that these people were getting all of this support from Washington D.C. and they felt like, no, we can be the center of Europe and we can be the puppets of Washington D.C. and then we'll get all the money and the accolades and everything. Okay, but there's a history with those Nazis in Ukraine of slaughtering Poles and slaughtering Jews and slaughtering anyone who they felt wasn't okay. And sooner or later, that had to come to the forefront. And now it appears that the Poles have had it up to here with the regime in with the Kiev regime. It seems to me that the extremist nature of the Kiev regime really meant that eventually they would. I mean, they've offended the Germans. The people will say, here, take some weapons. And instead of saying thank you, certainly we don't want the war to continue. We don't want them to be weaponized. But they'll say, you didn't give me enough. What's wrong with you? You're not supporting. They're the most ungrateful, the most just angry, absurd people. They are what you would think that a Nazi would be, not nice people. Your thoughts of the relationship between Poland and Ukraine and Ukraine, based on what you know of Poland and Ukraine in history, et cetera, and how that relationship seems to be getting to where it probably should have been from the beginning, based on what the Ukrainian extremists have done to the Poles in history. Your thoughts?
The Poland does have a great history and very complicated history, and Russia and Poland do have a very complicated history of relationship Before the revolution, Poland was a part of Russia. It's a huge history of well, fighting between the two countries. And Poland, I think Poland was have been have spent, let's say, have spent way more time of its history being an enemy of Russia rather than a friend or a good neighbor. So we have different, very difficult relations. But speaking of Polish relations and Ukrainian relations, uh, now they are absolutely unnatural. And we shouldn't talk about the Polish relationship and the Ukrainian relationship. It's a relationship of two governments, way separated from people. Yes, I know that in Poland there is a huge lobby supporting Ukraine, but great number of people in Poland does consider Russia as a good neighbor, are sympathetic to Russians, and they are not, feeling that bad of Soviet era history when a lot of people consider Poland to be conquered by Soviet Union. No, Soviet Union just helped the communists to take over the country. Yes, Poland was ruled by communists, which is, is not entirely bad if some people may see. Well, I think the communist rule was not bad because people, yes, in some point, Poland will have been rather free in Soviet era, but everybody knew and everybody know in Poland what was that, what was done by the Ukrainian Nazis during the Second World War. It's unthinkable, unspeakable. This is, you know what this is. And, you know, making them heroes, supporting them now, it's a spit in the face of every last citizen of Poland, which doesn't like Russia at all, maybe, which is okay to me. You don't have to like us. Well, we don't have to like each other, maybe, but we have to respect each other. But every last Polish citizen should be ashamed of their government and should be offended of what they are doing because they are supporting the same ideas, the same ideology, which, which was killing their citizens, children. I'm sorry. Well, I can talk about it with straight face when I, recall those shots and things which I read, which I used to see what the Ukrainian Nazis have done in Poland, in Belarus, in Ukraine, in occupied territory of Soviet Union, the same thing. And it makes me almost break down, you see, because it's horrible. And now this is, I wouldn't call it a relation, it's a show off. It's a show off to the all West that, like you said, that the Poland is the first. We are the locomotive of Europe. We are the forepost of Europe leading the future Europe against Russia, opposing Russia. Give us, give us, give us, give us, give us. Yeah, there was an anecdote. I hate anecdotes about nations. I hate them. This is not right. But they pretty much remind me of some anecdote, of some joke, with the same kivas as Ukrainians. Ukraine is a humiliated, little thing which, give us, they're killing us, please help us, give us, give us, give us. And the Poles, they are trying to make it with a straight good face. Well, we should give us so we could oppose them because we're closer to them. We have the same border and we are the forepost. We are the next after Ukraine. They are speculating. They are selling it. That's what it is. This is not a relationship between countries. This is a pure commercial
Prostitution.
thing.
It's prostitution.
Absolutely. Right.
Prostitution, selling their bodies, selling their souls to the U.S. empire.
The political elites are pimps because they are selling their societies.
Yes.
On the streets, like that. So to speak, figuratively speaking. Well, That's what it is, to my opinion. Absolutely, because this is a whole big disgusting thing. And a lot of people in Poland, they do understand what it is. They may not like Russia, and they don't have. They are absolutely rightful in having their opinion about Russia. It's okay. I can understand that and I can respect that. But they say we don't. It doesn't have to be this way. We don't have to support Ukraine. We must not do this. Yes, we are neighbors. We have to live with Russia. Maybe not as friends, but as neighbors which respect each other. So that's how I would put this.
Any thoughts on the Slovakia election? That's interesting.
I don't think I can talk a lot about Slovakia. And I have a friend who left for Slovakia 4 years ago. And in 2014, he was like, I was working for an international news agency, sort of independent, telling the truth. Well, it still exists, but a few years back, I stopped contacting with them because they are just making money on politics. But for the time being, they just try to do right thing. And I was working from Russia, telling the stories, showing them from different angles. And my friend was like, may I help in any way? I just want to help my country. I want to help Russia. And 3 years ago, he immigrated to Slovakia. But not the country of his dreams, Czech Republic, but Slovakia, a little bit close to it. And he flipped over. Now he speaks totally different. I don't know what's the nature of it. Maybe he found himself in the society in which he has to act like this, stepping over himself. And, it is very bad. It broke my heart, actually. And on the other thing, I have a Slovak Catholic priest who was sent to Russia to work in Russia. I'm not going to say his name. You see why. He does have a family mother and everything in Slovakia. But he was called a Z priest. You see what it means? A Z priest. Because of his position. Because of the ground he stands on.
Wow.
He's a half Polish, half Slovakian. And he, So I wasn't too deep into what is going on in Slovakia, but I know that Russian immigrants, Ukrainian lobby, they are going on yellow and blue. So you see what the same thing is happening with like in all the Europe, but Slovakia, well, it acts a bit like Poland, but maybe not that prostitute-like.
Well, I have a question that I want to know about. In the West, you've been a journalist. Were you a journalist? You were involved in journalism in the Soviet Union?
No,
Now,
I just graduated from school in Soviet Union, and I stepped into New Russia right away when I just graduated from school.
oh, okay. Because I was going to ask you about your thoughts on journalism in the Soviet Union. Here what we're told is, well, in the Soviet Union there was nothing but lies and constant propaganda, and everything that you read on the newspaper and everything that you saw, constantly was just controlled by the government, and people didn't get any freedom of information or what have you. Now it's interesting because that's the way it is in the United States right now. We get nothing but lies and propaganda. You find people who get thrown off of Twitter or YouTube or whatever if they say things that go against the government narrative. What are your thoughts on journalism in the Soviet Union? Was there any free journalism? Was there any honest journalism during the Soviet years?
By all means, it was. Like I said, two things. As we saw the world in the Soviet Union, and and I'll say about how we saw the internal things in Soviet Union. Speaking of journalism, and the mass media in Soviet Union was one of the most huge things. People have been reading newspapers, devouring them, just like now people are devouring stuff on the internet. But you see, like I said, my favorite shows on television have been about the international affairs, the
Hmm.
world today, and international panorama, which were, like I said, presented by professional diplomats.
Hmm.
And the way they put it, they presented the footage from the Western countries, from the countries of Latin America, from Cuba. We did have journalists and reporters everywhere, and they provided with the material which was presented on these shows. And for some moment, when Soviet Union crashed, we were told like the same thing, like the West is being told that that was always a propaganda thing. The West is different, and and for some time we're just being confused because I was a kid. I was 16 when the Soviet Union collapsed. I'm sorry, 18 in 1991. Now I'm 50, and so. But a few years have passed, and we realize that everything we have been told about the West was the truth. Yes, it was the truth, but they told that these things are bad, this is so, this is that, this is this. But that was the true thing. Well, they didn't present us about the all good things in the West. What we did know, um, a lot of good actors from the United States, from Europe. We did know singers from Europe, from the United States. I think none in the United States knew who Russian actors and singers have been, unless it's the movie which was presented on or nominated on Oscar. We did have a few movies in the Soviet Union, great movies, which have been nominated for Oscar as the best movie made overseas. You see, and speaking of internal affairs, we have a lot. We did have a lot of newspapers, radio shows, television shows where they always brought up which is bad. Well, when people or local government performs not good. So yes, mostly they presented it like only the best which is going on. But we did have a critical side of journalism. Journalists have always tried to present which is bad, is abusing power sometimes, or so on and so forth. Yes, things like that did happen in the Soviet Union. Soviet Union just the same country with the same people like the whole world, which just did another type of government, another type of economics, and another ideology. We share the same biology despite of ideology. Just, the Russians, they sing song. So we did the same thing, the same nature. We are the same people, just a little bit different culture. And you see, the journalism in Soviet Union was the really high-class journalism. Yes, we did have this filter, this censorship. Yes, we were not allowed to listen to the best rock groups, American rock groups, because it was considered of a based on bad ideas. You see, like
Hmm.
Black Sabbath. What is Black Sabbath? This
Right.
is
Yes. Yes.
something
Yes.
like
That kind
black
of stuff.
magic. It's not good.
Yeah.
So people should listen to it because well, we don't have we have different ideas. I have different point of view on that. I think they should allow us to listen to the best of American rock. Yes, they might correct something that so the guys, this is a capitalist way of seeing the world, capitalist values, but the music is good, and this is good, this is bad. That's how foreign culture should be presented to your people. I think if you have strong censorship and strong ideology in the country. And yes, sometimes we have been deprived of some good things which were coming from the West. But the journalism was the journalism which I'm not, you see, embarrassed of even now.
Well, as you probably know, I have a show on Sputnik, and I go on
Mhm.
RT regularly, Radio Sputnik in Washington, D.C. And I
Right.
tell everyone the journalism is excellent there. That basically we cover international affairs, but I cover international affairs. Um, I'm allowed to cover whatever I want. Nobody tells me what to say. And the my editor, his main focus is be accurate. That's his main focus. Be accurate. Don't take some biased, idealistic position on things. Give people accurate information and they can make a decision for themselves. Have historians on, we have
Right.
intellectuals on, etc., so that people can make a decision for themselves. So I'm, that my experience with Russian journalism is a very, very positive experience. Um, I'll tell you something I found interesting. Having spent time in South America in some of the socialist countries, in some of the poorer countries, and having friends, a lot of friends and coworkers, etc., and people who I know that were in the Soviet Union, one of the things that I found, even the very poor socialist countries, and mainly they were poor because of U.S. sanctions, not because that socialism doesn't work. It was because the U.S. tried to stop it from working. Okay,
Right.
education. The people were very knowledgeable, very educated, very knowledgeable about world affairs. I found that when I come home to the United States, the people here, our education system is poor. People are indoctrinated into ideological beliefs. They don't know the history well. But I found that socialist countries, education's very well. And I find that people from the Soviet Union, the people that I know that were educated in the Soviet Union, are very well educated. What are your thoughts on the education system in the Soviet Union and my comments on that?
Well, your comments are absolutely correct. Just absolutely correct. And I consider the educational system of the Soviet Union to be the best ever, the best educational system ever created on this earth, in the history of the earth. Because the educational system of pre-Soviet Russia was good. It was good, but it was limited to the elite class.
Hmm.
Other people have been receiving just little of it, just a few, just, But in the Soviet Union, the first thing communists have done, they started educating people. Lenin said, first things first, we should eliminate ignorance. We should teach people to read math. We should just present them literature. The aristocratic class was which aristocratic class was taught on, and we were taught on Tolstoy, Dostoevsky. We've been taught every classic, writer of Russian literature, and we were studying American classics at school in Soviet Union. I graduated from school in Soviet Union, guys. We studied Theodore Dreiser, William Faulkner, you see, Francis Scott Fitzgerald, one of my favorites. So that's what we have been, taught in Russia, in Soviet Union. We have been taught great math. When I was graduating from the School of Scientific Center in Irkutsk, which was general average school, but with a little bit of higher level than math and physics, I was, yes, we were have been studying the university program at the last years of our school. Well, we did have a 10-year system, and so the 10th grade was the final grade of school. So in ninth and 10th grade, we have been studied the university math level. So
Wow.
English, unfortunately, English and German was taught very good in Soviet Union. German at schools. I don't know what's the trick here, but those guys who studied German at schools, they've been better in language than those who had been studying Russian. So the class was divided into parts, two groups. One group studies German because they wanted to study German, and the other was studying English. Well, I don't know why the English guys were way worse in English than those guys who studied German in German. So you see, but speaking of literature, speaking of history, world history, ancient history, you see, biology, chemistry, physics, math, it was high level teaching. And in 1988, when the contacts between Soviet Union and America have started, well, like you see, Gorbachev era, we started contacting, and some guys from my class were chosen to visit Hugin, Hugin, and some school guys from Hugin have been received at my school. Yeah, the Americans in 1988. And when sisters Olga and Julia Suturins, well, they were sort of one of the best learners at class. Well, even our class did have best learners, not so good learners.
Right.
Anyway, they went to the United States, and at school in Houston, they said that we were sitting and didn't know what to do because everything the teacher at the United States at any class have asked us, we just answered and okay, leave it like this. And when we were given math, we just okay. That was 5 years back when we studied that. So what should we do now? Please give us something we don't know, or give us something we should break our minds on to figure it out. So you see, this educational system of Soviet Union was just what I miss now, because now in Russia we don't have that good educational system. And now I see some understanding in the government that we should take the best from the Soviet Union to restore it now, because those people who have eliminated my motherland, Soviet Union, but I consider Soviet Union as my motherland. I would hate myself if I betrayed it, because it's this country which gave me everything: free education, totally free education. My mother's job, my father's job. I never was deprived of food or anything. We haven't been rich, but we were far from being poor or something, you know. And there was no such thing as unemployment in Soviet Union. It was illegal not to work in Soviet Union. It was illegal. If you don't work, there's something bad about you. And
Let me ask you this. What about people, let's say you were blind, or you had some mental problems, people that couldn't take care of themselves. They had physical ailments, things of that nature. What in the Soviet Union, what happened with them?
I see. You see, one of my cousins, she had a birth trauma.
Hmm.
One of my older cousins, she died 10 years ago, something like that. And she was not, unfortunately, because of that trauma, she wasn't like everybody, you
Right.
see.
Yes.
She was sweet. She was very kind. She was not stupid, but she did have problems. She had an epilepsy, and you see how she was cared. Everybody seemed to care about her. There was a special social service. The teachers, once she was a school age, became a school age, 7, she was visited by teachers, special teachers to teach kids like her. She was visited by doctors, absolutely for free. She was provided by special medications for absolutely free. My aunt just had to go to a local drugstore. She did had a receipt in the local clinic, which she was visiting the same doctor, supervising my sister, and she wrote every month. She wrote a special receipt for her. My aunt went with this piece of paper to the local drugstore or any drugstore in the city, and she was given all needed medication for free. Well, if she was okay for herself, she did have to buy them.
Hmm.
But for my sister, she was given it for free. My sister was receiving pension since she was a child. So the pension was supporting the family because they have real problems. They had the difficulty with the child who, yes, and the whole system supported them. Whole system. Till the, till the day she died in 2012, I believe she died in 2012. Uh, so even in post-Soviet Russia, we have social programs like in Soviet Union.
Hmm.
So other people with well, you see, serious mental problems. Sometimes they have been taken care of by their relatives, their families, and if they went violent or something, they have been taken to special asylums where they have been taken care of by the government and visited by relatives. I think that was the same way like in America, just the same way, I think.
Until the 1980s, when they put people out of those asylums on the street, and that's
Absolutely.
when the homelessness issue started. There were people mental illness. To this day, my office is in Washington D.C. on K Street. It's right around the corner from the White House. I'm 4 blocks from the White House. If I walk to the corner, I can look at the White House. There are people sleeping on the streets. There are people, you see people lying on the sidewalk asleep. Um, and K Street is, that's where the big money, the people that work there are very, very wealthy people, make a lot of money, all lawyers and lobbyists and all that kind of stuff. So there are all these wealthy people, expensive cars going up and down the road, and there are people lying on the street. And oftentimes, you could tell there's something wrong. You walk, they're talking to themselves, they're looking around, they don't know what's going. There could obviously there are people that can't really take care of themselves. And so in America, there's nothing for them. There is nothing. It is that's our society.
That
Now
was
it's a
not the
sad state
way
of
it
affairs.
worked in the Soviet Union. Nothing of the kind. That was not the way. They haven't shut down these institutions even now. And in Soviet Union, thank God, I don't know how it is now. I just didn't look into it because, well, everybody is okay in my family and with my friends. But in the Soviet Union, these people, even violent people, psychics, or
Yes,
I'm
yes,
sorry, not
yes.
psychics, psychos, they have been taken there also for absolutely free. The family didn't have to pay anything. They didn't have to pay a cent because those people were taken care of by the government. Fed, well, they provided clothes, everything. Bed,
What
and
age did they provide pensions when you got older, that at a certain age in the Soviet Union that you didn't have to work anymore? Or what age? How did that work when you got older and you couldn't? People get older, they can't work. How did that work?
I may be mistaken, and I'm ashamed of it. But I believe for women it was 55 years, and for men I believe 60 years, something like that. I may be mistaken, 5 years more, maybe 60 for women or 65 or 74. Oh, no, 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 not 70. 60 or 65 for men. 70, you were a pensioner long back. So, and the people on pension they did have a lot of benefits, social benefits to the rest of their life, a lot of benefits, especially if you have been so-called veteran of labor veterans. So if you're like my grandma, she was a teacher of Russian language and literature, and she used to do it for 47 years. And she did have she was a decorated person because she used to work hard during the Second World War, and thanks to all of this, she had a lot of benefits, a lot. Well, my grandma did have a great health, the greatest health I remember of anybody I've seen. And she was a daughter of Cossack officer. well, strong woman, and she never went to the hospitals. Just a few times during her life, she was a very healthy woman, and she didn't have to, um, to take or to receive medicines for free. But she did have that right. Should something happen to her, she had a benefit to receive medicines for free also. The veterans of Second World War have been taken care of greatly, and also did have a huge benefits. So and pensioners did have a very comfortable lives, and many of them had the ability to support even young families of their grandchildren or their children when the young family tried to, get a bit more. There were financial difficulties, nothing more difficulties. So some people just spend a lot of money, regardless of ideology. Everybody,
Certainly.
wants, yes, something to buy something or so, and they have been able to just keep money and to help young family to buy a car, for instance, to help young family to buy something which they can't afford yet. So you see, that was like
Well,
this.
what about housing in the Soviet Union? I see a lot of pictures, and I even see it in, some of the other Soviet, Poland, and even in Ukraine, these high-rise buildings. And what's interesting is when I was in Venezuela, which is a socialist country, I
Hmm.
saw all of these high-rise buildings, similar to Soviet Union high-rise buildings. And I said, "What are all of those high-rise buildings?" And they said they give them free to the people. And they said the one I went by, and I saw a huge line of high-rise buildings outside of Caracas. And I said, "What is that?" And they said that was a military base. And Hugo Chavez rode by the military base and said, "We don't need all of that room. I want you to take all of that area and build houses for the poor people. The little part over there, that'll be the military base." How did people, did you have to buy a house? How did it work? I mean, apartment where you lived. How did you get housing in the Soviet Union? How did families get housing?
I see, yeah. The housing problem was really a problem in Soviet Union. Uh, you might buy an apartment just in regular building like everybody lives at. Well, not much, but they provided the housing for free in Soviet Union. So since you are, let's say, a teacher for a special school, the school has been is was an taken care of by the local government of special district, as you know, and the local government was responsible for dealing with the housing problems of teachers. So yes, there was a problem, and you see the line of waiting for a free apartment. You had to wait for years sometimes. Sometimes people have been provided with an apartment, free apartment, by the way, fast. It depended on where you worked at. People who used to work at some special plants or huge automobile factories, they have been provided faster with an apartment than anyone. Well, and sometimes it was a problem. You had to wait long. You had to live with your parents, or you had to live in the dormitory, special dormitory, and which was difficult. You know, Now I can't afford an apartment and I don't rent an apartment. My wife, my two kids, and I live in a student dormitory at campus at the university of the university my wife works for. So in the Soviet Union, we would be provided with a free apartment long ago. And especially if you are a teacher in the Soviet Union, which is, sent to work in the country,
Hmm.
you know, outside of the city. Well, let's say in a village, big or not big, you would be provided with an apartment just immediately because the teachers and doctors who went to go out of the city to work at the countryside. So they did have huge privileges, huge privileges. They were provided with all comforts the government can do. So you would live and take care of working class there. So You see, one of the best achievement of Soviet educational system of higher education, you mean, you see, university education and all the graduates uh, didn't have right to choose where to work. There
Hmm.
was a system of direction. You have been directed to work here, there, and you were obliged to spend, let's say, 5 years at a certain place. Where the government tells you. Some people say this is crazy. This is not freedom. But did have a guaranteed job, and the best students, they were absolutely free to choose where to work, where to go, in which city, and on and on. So medical students have been said, okay, you were not so good. You're good, but not that good as, well, let's say Maria. Maria may stay in Moscow, may go to Leningrad, may go anywhere and choose any clinic she wants and work there. But you didn't work hard, you didn't study too hard, so you have to go, let's say, 200 kilometers, or let's say 150 miles away from Moscow or from your city, and to work at the village there for 3 years. But the salary is good, higher than in the city. You are provided with an apartment, and any help you need, just tell the local government. Okay, great. So you have a guaranteed place of residence, salary, and all the social benefits. Is that bad? I think many people in the West would love this concept. You see? And that's how it worked. That's how it works. Yes, the housing problem was a problem in Soviet Union. Yes, and a lot of people had to live with their parents in tiny apartments, and was not really good. But in Stalin times, it was, yes, in Stalin times, yeah, take it or leave it. So it was better. Khrushchev have broken the best Stalin have created about the economy in the Soviet Union. Khrushchev economy, when Khrushchev went to power in 1953, Khrushchev economy was bad. And that's why we did have this housing problem in 60s, 70s, and 80s. If Stalin's system of economy should Stalin system of economy survive, there would be no any housing problem in the Soviet Union. It's a
Well, this,
huge topic. I think
yes.
we'll discuss it sometime later
Yes,
because
I really enjoy talking. I've really enjoyed learning about the Soviet Union. I love to learn, and I'd like to get you back on again. And I'd like to talk about the Soviet Union. I'd like to learn more about it. I find that very interesting, and I really appreciate it. Dmitri Zolotarev, where can people find you online?
well, just my handle on YouTube, like you see it. My handle on YouTube is Zolotarev DM, no spaces. At character Zolotarev DM. You can find it. You just type it youtube.com/Zolotarev DM. At character Zolotarev DM, and here I am. Well, if you don't mind, I can provide you with the whole link to my channel, and which you can post. In the
Definitely, it's the Daily Planet, correct?
Daily Planet. The channel name is Daily Planet. Well,
Oh,
there I
and
am,
your
standing like this,
yeah,
and the
and
golden.
your channel is actually in Russian, correct? You speak in Russian on your channel.
Yes, sometimes it's in Russian, and when I do interviews in English, like on Press TV, which is not too often, or I hope I can, if you allow me, I would upload our today's conversation on my channel
Certainly.
also. When I do an interview with one of the greatest men I know, Scott Reeder,
Yes, good friend of mine.
well, so I plays both English version and Russian version. Not every time. When I'm too embarrassed about my English, sometimes I am. My English
Your
is
English
just.
is great. Your English is wonderful.
Thank you, but well,
I'll put it like this: it's a lot better than my Russian.
just the same way as Scott Reeder does. Yes, he says the same thing.
All right, thank you very much, everyone. Dmitry Zolotarev. Go to his channel and subscribe if you speak Russian,
Thank you.
particularly, and if not, you can. There'll be some stuff there in English. It's the Daily Planet. Once again, don't forget. Um, There's go to, make sure you go to rockfin.com/Garland Nixon and sign up, just in case they throw me off of YouTube one day. You will know where to find me. You never know, that could happen. And you're also on VK, right? You're on all the Russian social media platforms, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
VK, Yandex.Zen. Well, YouTube is different topic. It's
Yeah.
fascinating. Trust me on this. We'll talk about it later.
Oh yes.
But
All right. Thanks a lot, everyone. Everyone, make sure you share this on all your social media platforms. Don't forget, there are various ways to support the channel: Patreon, buy me a coffee, etc. Thanks very much. This is Dmitri Zolotarev, good friend and a great YouTuber, great journalist, brilliant guy. Thanks a lot, everybody. Share this on all your
nice to
social
meet
media
you.
platforms. I'm out.